Nobody. Time to get away from me, yeah.
Jeff was just here, he was going to grab my his car.
Okay. Here, Mark. You are? Jeff and John.
The back sink doesn't have a
You
door.
have two, would you just have one main sink?
All right.
Yeah,
while
one
you're
main sink and
discussing,
a
you
bar
guys
sink.
are-
Yeah, one large main sink with with one outlet,
No,
only one garbage.
well, they come as a set of two, so.
Oh, well, we have another one in La Cañada. So there we go. Okay,
And that'll save you. You can wash whatever you want to do in
and then,
the sink, the plate, everything. Just pick it up, tap it into your
What do
trash
they-
can,
what do they call it? Home Depot.
just sink screens or
Okay, so
Green screen.
green screen or.
John Dollar, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Hello.
Hello.
Let's see, I'm trying to make you larger. There. Hi, nice to see you. 4.
These
Five.
things that I think are kind of cute.
Godfrey's hiding.
I was thinking, oh, it's a trail map too.
That's trail map.
I'm always hiding.
It's the safest way to be.
Hayden.
Hello, John
Can
Epstein.
you hear me?
Any at the time.
Yes,
Color.
John, we can hear you.
That was Rob.
I can't see me. Can you see me?
Thanks for joining, Rob.
Well, I think,
Oh.
said he was in Oregon.
Yeah, Rob is,
And we-
it sounds like a really
3
serene
o'clock, so if
location.
we're ready, I'll get the recording going, but,
3 o'clock, get going.
Well, is this all?
We should. You know, what I'm realizing is that the plan committee maybe doesn't know what's fine. We're good. Thank you. Maybe a new business, we could
okay.
describe that.
Oh, yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
Make it official.
Well, who's all here? John,
Oh, that's
Yes,
so.
good.
Well, being that it is 3 o'clock and we are committed to a public hearing that starts at 3 o'clock, I am going to start the meeting promptly and open up the public hearing. Today is August 28th, and we're at the town of Alta, and we are here to accept comments on modifications to code section 1011-1 subdivision ordinance of the town of Alta. And these provisions and amendments have been put in place as a result of the state of Utah legislature putting some mandates on all municipalities to implement some clarifications and standardizations of what's required for subdivisions approvals. And so the town has been working with legal counsel to go through its subdivision ordinance and bring it into compliance with state requirements and good practices. So with that, I will open it up to public comments. Both in person and virtually, if there are any.
Do we have anybody, Molly?
No members of the public online.
Okay. We are in the, if I may, we are in the, habit of keeping the public hearing open until the posted
Right, that's
closure time, so we
that's what
just,
I was just about to say.
yeah.
We
there's
have
awkward silence.
5 minutes to do that, so. Understand you should have an instrument. That's
That was pleasant. A little cello back.
For next time.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you're used to just walking, you know, to
Right.
stabilize yourself.
Or hold music.
We could get the Cisco hold music tune for on the Zoom call.
So
Yeah,
this will
right.
put the pressure on Polly, but Paul Thompson, the ex-mayor of Sandy and our old attorney, in situations like this would get up and go play the piano, which I think they have removed from the community center.
Yeah.
Polly, next month, you're on.
I'll pull out my kazoo.
Recorder down here.
Ooh.
We're
Yeah,
gonna
Sarah might
second
have
grade.
Phase in my career, which is stand up and open talk at the next meeting.
Really hard, like a full.
Oh,
A harp, huh?
well, she had a loom. Which is like a harp,
Oh, like a lute?
no,
A
a loom,
loom,
like to
like
make a rope,
weaving?
yes,
Oh,
textiles.
oh, it just looks like.
Could whistle.
No, I can't
Except-
really do
Can't
that,
whistle.
I can't whistle.
I can't whistle either.
John, that side, can you whistle?
I can, but I'm not going to.
Good.
I
Well,
can.
that's good. We
do
did
Side of
4
the
minutes.
Street or somewhere over the rainbow, you know, Americana.
Impressed by your snack game.
Tony walks in.
Not Always
Oh, I see.
bought the snacks for the cleanup day.
Oh,
Right,
yeah,
that's probably where they came from.
yeah.
Are the flowers right now, are they over or there's still a few?
There's still a few, yeah.
Flowers?
I was up in Albion Basin yesterday and still Indian paintbrush and,
I mean, they're not zero, but they're far from peak.
oh, yeah.
It's the late season stuff, it's like the asters
Yeah.
and whatever those sort of less showy yellow flowers are, I do love the asters, they're everywhere,
Yeah,
it's super cool.
I'm waiting for
So
the
here's,
leaves to turn any day.
Yeah. we
yeah,
should-
it's actually, I was up in Little Dell riding up towards Big Mountain, and there were a few trees that were looking on the edge.
Are they? Yeah, I've spotted a couple around here too that are
So,
on the edge.
well, it is 3:05 by my watch, which is closely tied to an Apple phone, so we can wait the entire 5 minutes or call it good. Given that our time for the public hearing has expired and we've had nobody come forward, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I will motion to close the public meeting.
And do we have a second?
Second that.
I'll second.
Okay, did you get that? It was John, I think. All those in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
No, hi Dave. Any opposed? Okay, public hearing is officially closed. With that, we'll move into the regular meeting of the Alta Town Planning Commission. Again, it's still August 28th of 2024. And so the first thing is to call the meeting to order. Welcome everybody, both in person here and online. I think everybody's present. So the internet turned out good in Oregon, huh? Kind of spotty, but so with that, the next item on the agenda is to open it up to any public comments that there may be from anybody. Since there is no public here, I think we will move on from that item. The next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of our May 22nd meeting of 2024. Do we have any comments relative to the minutes as they were prepared?
My name was spelled incorrectly here. I don't know how much that matters, but.
It does matter.
Okay,
I
that first paragraph. Other than that, it's good.
Chris, I believe you have one more.
I do have a note, so where is your name misspelled?
In the bold, approval of the previous minutes,
Oh, Marion,
yeah. Okay, me.
do you notice? Let's take a moment and just see if we can, yeah, but only one instance of that, okay. So the minutes circulated to the planning commission had a signature bar at the bottom for them to be approved by Chris Otto, assistant town manager. We did post a a set of minutes on the website with my name in the signature block to approve the minutes. And I guess I might as well take the occasion to announce that Chris Alta was not working here at the town anymore. He moved over to be the director of Salt Lake County Public Parks and Rec,
Good for him.
which is auspicious. And Molly Austin is going to become the new assistant town manager.
Is going to, or is, it has become?
Well, so her replacement doesn't start until Tuesday. At which point Molly will become the assistant town manager, but she'll be training Brooke primarily for the first couple weeks.
And you have her protocol for snacks.
Yeah, Molly does some, so, yeah.
Who's
So-
the new hire? What, do we not need,
Uh,
has it been announced?
Her name is Brooke Boone, and she, amongst other cool and relevant jobs, she worked for skier services for a few years,
Oh, cool.
summer and winter. She worked in the summer booth and has some contacts and
Well, with the correction of a spelling and the signature block, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make that motion to approve the last minutes as amended.
There's a motion.
And I'll second.
Second by, who's that?
Rob.
Rob? Thank you. I'm gonna do it
Yep.
this lot. Anybody opposed to approving the minutes? If not, we'll consider it unanimous and move the minutes approved. So the next item is to enter into a discussion of the amendments to the town code 10-11-1 subdivision, which we've been through at least 2 meetings of legal counsel on it. Obviously, there was nothing important that came from public comments at this point. I did send out a note to Chris and CC'd everybody, I think, of an inclusion that I think we ought to put in there is that if a water system is going to be expanded of a certain size, more than 500 feet of culinary pipeline, a water tank, a pump station, or other major infrastructures, it is required to be approved by the state of Utah. And even in a large city like Salt Lake City, when I had developers doing, thousands of feet of pipeline and tanks and everything, we would still require that they go before the State Division of Drinking Water and get approval. So not every project will require it, but somewhere within the Culinary Water Authority, I think we just need to point out that certain classes of development or classes of improvements for a subdivision will require this approval from the state of Utah. And, to get that approval letter from the state, they have all sorts of check forms and engineers, and it's quite a laborious process. And I'm not sure the exact place the best place to actually require it. It's good to have it at the preliminary subdivision place because then you can iron it out. But having a proposed applicant go through that level of engineering detail to get the letter of approval from the state may be a little bit onerous. So I don't know, Polly, if you have any thoughts on it, of where best to insert this into the ordinance, or just to notice that this may be a requirement that they will have to do before final subdivision approval.
I'll defer to Todd because he's the one that created the document. But and I spoke with Chris a little bit about this, and I think it's good. The one clarification is, do you want this does the planning commission want to recommend that it apply to all water systems in the town of Alta or just ones which are public water systems? Because I think there are 3 that Chris told me that are not, that don't rise to the level of to a public water system.
Yeah. Again, that's why I included the copy link over to the state law. It defines a public water system as anything that serves more than 25 customers. And is connected potentially to a public water system. So I think, you know, if it's just a line going to a house or a line going to a private pump station up to a couple of houses, I still think that the fact that it's connected to the town of Alta system pulls it into the public realm.
Okay. And one other clarification I just want to make in looking over the agenda, just so that you know. So you're going to be making a recommendation to the council for the ordinance change as opposed to approving it here because it's ordinance and the council has the last say on ordinances.
I understand that. So that's the direction we were headed.
Yeah, no,
It's
I just wanted to correct that because we misstated it on the agenda.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I know is that we were going to basically forward it to the council for their approval.
Yeah, so I just
So-
want to look. The many,
So Todd, I'm sorry.
no, go
I was gonna
ahead.
say- I was gonna ask Todd if he had any thoughts on where best to insert this requirement of public drinking water improvements.
I like it better in section 10-11-4, subpart 3 in that subsection A, which makes reference to culinary water requirements. I know that's a section that generally refers to your preliminary plat process, and I appreciate the concern about the burden on a developer to get that final approval letter from the Division of Drinking Water. I think the way I would phrase it is to say at the end of subsection A that the requirements of the State Division of Drinking Water must be satisfied and division approval where required shall be obtained before a final plat is approved. And I think then it puts them on notice that that requirement exists. And in
Right.
some circumstances, if it's a letter they have to have from the state, they have to have that before you approve a final plat.
I think that's a great way to go. So,
I think we probably need a narrower. How can we do this, Polly or Todd? Do we need specific language to adopt as an amendment, or can we adopt this text with some sort of more general motion to incorporate that requirement?
And on that question, I would defer to Polly. I don't know what your normal practice has been. From a legal standpoint, I think you are fine if you were to approve the document for recommendation to your council with that change incorporated. And then we would let your planning commission have a look at that informally before it gets to the council. But I think you certainly can move it on without seeing the very specific language. I think we have a good enough idea of what you're forwarding on to your council now.
Okay.
Right.
Can you restate your recommendation in that case?
and the location,
Sure.
Isn't
At the very end of subsection 3A in section 1011-4, I would add a new sentence at the end of that subsection that would read, requirements of the State Division of Drinking Water must be satisfied and division approval where required shall be obtained before a final plat is approved.
Do you get that?
I didn't, but I'm sure that.
Do you get that?
I'm gonna get it later, yeah.
Okay.
But I-
Right,
From the recording.
yeah, we'll
Okay.
get that.
Great.
So,
You can go pretty fast.
are there any other comments or thoughts before I call for a motion on a recommendation to forward this revision to the subdivision ordinance to the town council for their consideration and approval?
Makes total sense to me.
I'll just make the comment that I regret not providing like kind of a memo to bring the commission up to speed on the substantive changes that we made in this amendment. They're substantive, but they're not substantial. I think Todd generally found the ordinance to be compliant with the updated state law from 2023. The major changes we made were to clarify that the planning commission does preliminary plat approval, that we will do a public hearing at the planning commission that will require preliminary title report for planning commission, preliminary application approval, and that staff does the final application approval with an updated title report.
Correct.
So,
I just actually had one question that came up with a different town. I just thought I'd check with what Todd thinks. I mean, currently we don't have any appeal, in here. Before, when it would go to the town council, generally appeals from the town council go just directly to the district court. I'm wondering if you're seeing in any of this language that you've been doing for other towns, what your thoughts are of should we put in an appeal process if if someone wants to appeal a subdivision.
My particular preference has always been to create some kind of an administrative appeal process internally if you have that opportunity. I think that generally tends to save expense and hassle of litigation for a city, gives you one more chance from an administrative standpoint. If you think you have a record that maybe needs to be bolstered a bit to do that. And my recommendation to most folks that I'm advising on this is to send those to a hearing officer, some kind of a law trained hearing officer. So if you have an appeal section in your land use ordinances, I would recommend that kind of an approach.
And just to clarify, Todd, from my understanding, the council, currently it's our council is our appeal authority for those type of things. But I believe the state code does not allow the council to touch subdivisions. Is that right?
That's the way I read the state code. I think it's a little ambiguous on an appeal provision, but I'm advising folks not to send those appeals to a council and to use a hearing officer.
Okay, thank you.
and who within, if it's not the town council, who within the town would be the hearing officer?
A lot of communities designate a law trained hearing officer who's independent of the city to hear appeals like that.
But if we don't have one, do we simply not have an administrative appeal pathway and you just go to court?
That would be the way it would look right now, Chris.
And to put one in place isn't that hard. You do a request for proposals, and there are a number of people, especially since we're on, in the Wasatch Front, there are many people that do it.
Yeah, there are a number, and because it's a professional service, I haven't looked at the town's procurement ordinance, but my hunch is you probably have a less stringent request for qualifications or proposals section, and if there's someone you know and like, you probably can just hire them for that role. So.
And where within this ordinance would we put the language of an appeal process?
Do you have a separate section for land use appeals in your land use code, Polly?
We do. It's chapter 5. But 10.5.1 says there's hereby created a town appeal authority. The town council will serve as the appeal authority.
Yeah, and I think I might add another section that just would specify for subdivisions.
Okay, you'd add that to 10.5.1 as opposed to, or somewhere in that chapter, as opposed to putting it in the subdivision ordinance directly.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, any other thoughts or comments?
Somewhere in here, there's buried something about fees, but it references a fee table. Is that something that's clear in the ordinance, or where that fee table is?
Fee schedule, I feel like we looked at this before, but I can't say we get a lot of subdivision application fees. We do have a
So it's free.
subdivision. $100 and $25 per lot. So if that breaks the bank, then
They have a look done.
we better get a cheaper loan, but, yeah, so we do have a fee, and it's in the fee schedule.
So along those lines, there's also some requirements in here, I'm finding, of what the city will bring to or city, town. Too many years of city. Will bring to the pre-application meeting in terms of list of requirements, standards and stuff like that. If you guys have a set of standards that have you prepared what you're going to have to bring?
To a subdivision, a subdivision application meeting, review meeting, John Goldner?
I
What would we
would,
bring to it?
I mean,
Subdivision
right
application.
now, I would just defer to our land use application requirements, because they're pretty much the same. And if
Yeah.
that's not good enough, we could look at that and then hone them.
It's an interesting question when you put it that way, John, because those application requirements are particularly contained in the zoning district sections, in the code sections for your zoning district, so I guess we would just apply the language in each zoning district based on how the land's zoned.
Plus the general application, land use application requirements, right?
Well, I guess my
See
just
Polly
word of
scowling and
caution,
frowning, but she's not, so.
so. I guess,
Right.
you were adopting some stuff that is requiring you to have it when you have one of these meetings, so you have to start preparing it. And you know, some of the standards in terms of engineering standards for like water systems and roads and things like that, you can adopt the Association of Public Works Orange Book, which, you know, we had adopted in Salt Lake City, and most communities use a form of that. Certain standard drawings are amended based on unique circumstances of the town or the city. But so it's a resource available to you. So with that, I would entertain a motion to forward the proposed revisions to the subdivision code 10-11-1 with the amendment to include at the end of section 3A requirement of the State Division of Drinking Water language to be provided by our legal counsel, along with a recommendation to the council that there be a separate section for an appeal process in section 10-510 of the Town of Alta Code to allow for an appeal process of a subdivision process.
Jeff, sorry I know you worked real hard to get that one all together. Just a question about a couple of
Sure.
punctuation and just a question. It looks like, so I read a lot of ordinances and all that stuff. So some of the stuff's not capitalized sometimes, and like planning commission's not capitalized. And then one thing that's probably more important is, I think on, let me get there, page 6. It just says within 500 of the property. I suppose we need a little feet symbol there to make that more clear, to communicate what we want, if that's what the intent was. Bottom of page 6 on the edited with all the markups version.
500, yeah. Feet.
And then what is the proper way to deal with the planning commission? Does it get, we're so important, we get capital letters on both sides or both words, or should it be lowercase, or maybe there's a rule?
I think it should be capitalized, and to the extent it's not, we'll make a final review. And with these edits, we'll make sure it is.
Okay. Probably more important is the 500 feet, but it was a more of a question. So thank you.
And Todd, when you do that, maybe also look at town manager. I see that as well. Sometimes it's capitalized, sometimes it's not.
Got it. Thank you, Polly.
I did take the liberty of making the town manager's designee gender neutral as is our style. So if there's any problem with how I did that, we can make those changes as well, but I was pretty thorough in doing that with Control F and all that, so.
Okay. So, with these proposed amendments to the code and the amendments discussed here today, do I have a motion to forward it to the town council for their consideration?
I'll make that motion to forward with those changes as noted.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Marion. Again, anybody opposed to forwarding this to the council for their consideration? If not, I will consider that a unanimous motion to approve.
Could you just have everyone say aye?
Aye.
And every aye?
Aye.
Aye.
And
Thank
thank you, Todd, for your work and nice to meet you.
Thank you, all of you.
Thank you.
Todd, I think we'll see you at the council meeting, hopefully.
Yes,
Okay, thank you very much.
thank you.
Hopefully it's only one council meeting, but we'll see.
So,
Chris, will that be in September or October?
I'm hoping to do it in September. I discussed Todd's availability on the 11th at 4 p.m. and there's a chance. Well, there's a chance we won't have all 5 council members there. So whether we'll have Todd do an informational a presentation on it, and then if there are no questions, we could just schedule for a vote in October. We'll see. I'm not sure whether we'll try to take action in October, but I'd like it at least to see if there are any hangups because the clock is ticking to get this adopted. So.
moving on, the next item on our agenda is a discussion of the town of Alta culinary water, wastewater and facilities master plan and project planning projects by Chris.
Okay, well, I made some slides that are not, are you able to put those on the screen? I could also just speak. I do some photographs of the building. That's about the most interesting thing in the slide deck, but yeah, we have a couple exciting projects going on that are sort of peripheral to the planning commission's responsibilities. These are projects to essentially plan capital improvements for the town over a 10-year horizon or so. And I can talk a little bit about their inception as we go forward. Kind of the I guess I would describe the starting point for these projects as being a council retreat that took place in January 2024. It was a timely occasion. We had just had a council election. We had one new council member. But the first time we had a new council and we had all new staff aside from the marshal in our kind of 5 full-time administrative town of Alta positions. So we thought it was a good time to kind of get everybody together and try to do some long range or medium range priority setting. The priorities that came out of that kind of along the general theme of addressing vulnerabilities that we know we have in the medium term. The 2 things that came up most prominently were that we have a beloved local police department here in Alta. It's pretty expensive. It's pretty kind of boutique and tailored to this environment. And in order to retain staff and kind of get ahead of challenges coming our way, such as the dissolution of UPD, we established a goal of taking various actions to kind of stabilize and fortify the marshal's office for the future. The other big one that came out of it was that we need to get our hands around the assets that the town owns. And there are just a few categories of that. We don't own roads, bridges, we don't own heavy equipment. There are common kinds of assets that municipalities own and manage that we don't. So we're sort of fortunate in that regard. But we do have water and sewer and systems and buildings. And most of those, especially the water and sewer systems, are date from the early 1970s. So those are kind of our focuses at the town in the office these days. We talked about governance, you know, who does what and how we communicate, and the need to get going on some real long-term planning as well. But these two projects that we're launching now are kind of flow from those first two goals. So again, we have buildings, we have utilities, we have a small amount of equipment. We have 4 buildings. You're in one of them, the community center, the town office. I'm describing it as 4 buildings: town office, community center, Alta Central, and then the Tom Moore toilet or Tom Moore historic structure, which you could call it structure. I think to call it a building would be a little bit generous, but it is on property that the town owns. And then we have water and sewer systems, and yeah, again, we have basically some vehicles and all the, you know, sort of administrative trappings of a small little office operation. I think those photos of the buildings are on the next slide. So here you go. The town office is our newest building. That is heavily reinforced concrete, built to spec, you know, built to a set of plans that we still retain. It's built for avalanche exposure. It has no significant deficiencies that we're aware of. The only functional deficiency I can really think of is that it's not particularly accessible. It's, you know, snowbound for much of the year, and you could potentially argue downstairs is ADA accessible, but upstairs is a little bit of a stretch. The next one there, Alta Central. So Alta Central is a stick-framed former dormitory of some kind that came up the canyon on a flatbed, I believe in 2 separate, it was 2 structures that came up the canyon on flatbeds from Fort Douglas, I believe in the 50s. It's been a number of things since then. It was Alta housing. It was a University of Utah research facility, the Quinney Center for Alpine Research or something like that, and then the town took it over in the 70s. It doesn't have any known functional deficiencies or major structural, electrical, plumbing, mechanical deficiencies, but it is, you know, 70 plus years old, not really built to spec. It's not built to avalanche exposure, although we don't necessarily know exactly what the exposure is to that building. And it's also pretty inaccessible. The community center that we're in right now, this is, we believe it's reinforced concrete. We don't have a set of plans for it, but it's a cinder block building, a couple kind of stick frame annexes on the side. The major deficiency in this building is that we have erosion control problems behind it and no real good way to get back there and replace the erosion control system without, you know, a significant impact to the landscape and a very substantial cost. So anyways, that's the community center. You know, there've been lots of conversations over the last 20 years about replacing it. And it is kind of our most public facility. We've got the post office here. This is technically a Salt Lake County reading room, although we don't have books in there anymore. We've got offices and the council chambers. We share garage space with UDOT, which is kind of critical infrastructure for Little Cotton Canyon. And then finally, we have this charming old historic structure, this relic of probably not the mining days, but of the early kind of recreation days of Alta, built in the late 30s by the CCC. known as the Tom Moore toilet. I'm sure that's not what it was originally referred to, but that is what we've come to call it. Inside those doors, if you're bold enough or well insured enough to go inside there, you will find two old kind of Forest Service style pit toilets with like classic old Forest Service guard station white beadboard. I mean, I'm embellishing a little bit, but I think it's got tremendous historic value. And we do own it, and it is falling apart. So we've kind of had a goal for a couple of years to identify what's necessary to at least arrest the decay of the building. So it's a kind of our goals for the project are to assess the condition of the buildings. The primary goal is to facilitate decision-making about what our most urgent needs are with our buildings, so prioritize major projects and improvements. Are we going to replace this building first? Are we going to replace another building? Are we not going to replace any buildings? Might we sort of mix and match the programming? Do we need to provide other services with the buildings that we have? And then hopefully we'll conclude the project in a position to begin launching funding and delivering projects on these buildings, potentially as significant as replacing a building. So we hope we get kind of standalone documents for each of kind of the primary facilities, a facilities master plan document that we could probably consider a living document, and then kind of a standalone structural recommendation for the Tom Moore toilet. Water and sewer systems, again, both the water and sewer system date to roughly the 70s. It may actually be the case that parts of the water system were in place before the 70s. But there have substantial improvements to the water system other than related to individual developments, like in West Alta on the bypass road, since about that time. The antimony treatment plant at the Bay City Tunnel, which I'm sure everybody's seen. I don't know, John Goldner might have some more details on this, but that's kind of the last really major change in the system, and that was over 20 years ago, I believe.
Close to that.
Yeah, like around 2000 or so, 2004 or 5. 2.5 miles of pipe. It's all PVC, or it's mostly PVC. 365,000 gallon storage tank. It's kind of right up there along Michigan City Road. Not really all that much technical complexity. A pressure reducing valve or two, some fire hydrants, 86 connections to the water system. The sewer system is even simpler. It's about 2 miles of ductile iron pipe installed in 1971. Legend has it, Snowbird and like the town of Alta was incorporated partially so we could get an EPA grant to fund a sewer project up and down the canyon. Snowbird covered the rest of the cost or something like that.
Do you know if it's cement mortar lined pipe?
I believe it is. Yep. Yes, 50 manholes, which sounds like a lot. That's what Steve McIntosh and Cotton Improvement District said. So it's a collection only system. It's really the town of Alta pipe itself is not technologically complex. There's no treatment. It flows into Salt Lake County Service Area number 3, pipe down at Snowbird, and then it's treated down in the valley by Cotton Improvement District. 56 connections to the sewer system. Something to keep in mind about the water and sewer is that not all the developed property in Alta is on our water and sewer systems. Salt Lake County Service Area number 3 incorporates Sugar Plum, Blackjack,
Martha Road.
And Powder Ridge is on our water system, but not our sewer system. I think that is as well as I've ever said that. Is that accurate?
Is that accurate to me? Yes.
Yeah.
So basically anything below Powder Ridge is all service area number 3, and then Powder Ridge is service area sewer town water.
Yeah, right. So supported by ratepayers. Separate accounts.
And there's still the interconnect between service area number 3 and the town system for emergencies.
Yes, there is. which kind of segues into, the fact that we know we have some deficiencies in the water system. In 2014, Service Area 3 and the town worked with Forest Green and I believe some University of Utah engineers to kind of lay out a capital improvement scheme to improve fire flows, kind of in a zone specific basis. And in that study, we have some discussion, technical discussion, following some water modeling of where in town we should improve fire flows. So we know that there are key areas in town where we don't have desirable fire flows or even adequate fire flows. Most of town, that does not apply in most of town. Our storage is a little deficient. Our storage tank could be bigger, or we need to evaluate other means of storing water, such as a tank at some other location. Essentially, you need to be able to provide a certain amount of PSI for gallons per minute, rather, over a period of 2 hours. And in most cases, we can provide the pressure, but 365,000 gallons doesn't quite get us there. So that is part of why we have the service area interconnect. And I don't actually know off the top of my head in our 2 major structure fires over the last 20 years whether we have used service area water, but I know that when structure fires occur, such as the structure fire at the village of Sugar Plum, President's Day of 2019, the service area was present to man that connection. So that is there, but the town council is more or less determined we want to improve the system so that we have adequate fire flows and storage on our own without having to rely on that. So that's a key focus of the water project.
So this is actually a relatively good time to be doing a water analysis and developing projects, because there's a big chunk of money that came into the state revolving loan fund from the Biden administration infrastructure improvement acts. And so there's money out there at relatively discounted interest rates to do these projects with.
That's on the radar. Yeah, that's on the radar for sure. Yeah, and we do have a civil engineering firm on board, to do this project. The goal is to have it completed by December 31st. That's not necessarily a date that's tied to any particular milestone. But we'd like to have updated cost estimates by the time we're doing our 2023 or 2025 budget, rather, beginning in roughly early March.
Did you find that at Watson and Prater study?
I didn't. I mean, we have a lot of paper files to look through, maybe not as many as some, but at the bookshelf where I think of studies like that being located, it's probably around. I'll talk to John.
All right.
The sewer system, the only deficiency there is that we've got a sag in the pipe through the Wildcat parking lot. It has not caused any significant backups to my knowledge, but
Sag, not a sage.
oh, a sage, right.
It's a very wise sag.
Yeah, we basically mitigate that by cleaning it. We do a television camera inspection and cleaning annually, and we clean that part extra diligently, essentially. But it's something we think we probably ought to correct, or at least start to outline alternatives for what to do about it. There are mixed opinions about the condition of the sewer pipe. From what I hear from the people who have their eyes on it, the most doesn't have substantial deficiencies, but it is a 53-year-old pipe, and I'm not aware of the last time we did hired civil engineers to independently evaluate the condition of it. So,
Tell you that age is not necessarily a factor in condition of the pipe.
What is?
The corrosiveness of the soil around it and whether or not you have, some sort of, deposition that creates hydrogen sulfide gas and that loads the pipe from the inside out, loads it. So as long as you have good velocities, even with the sag, you know, as long as the velocities are flushing through there and you're not accumulating, you know, big depths of, material to, go anaerobic and create this hydrogen sulfide gas, you don't really have issues. And it is actually quite inexpensive to, slip line pipes in place these days.
Really?
I used to take an 8-inch pipe and we would go through a city block. And before we started slip lining it, we would shut down the city block for 3 to 4 weeks while the contractor was in there and dug everything up. When we went to this in situ form sort of lining, it's basically like it's a polyurethane sock impregnated with epoxy. And then it's pushed through and inverted and then heat cured. But it went from like $100 a foot down to like $8 to $10 a foot.
Oh, wow. It sounds like it's basically recoating the interior.
Correct. And it's has a much slicker surface than
So it
the
flows
cement,
better.
so it flows better.
Yeah. Sure.
Well, that we have, that's been proposed to us as a way we could improve the condition of the sewer system if necessary. I think it does reduce a little bit the capacity of the system because it.
Not based on the slickness factor.
Okay. Interesting.
Manning's equation with a better N factor.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, next time we have a public hearing, that's a little quiet. I do have all of the TV inspection footage. That we can put up.
Not to diverge, but I have, you know, I've watched hours and hours and hours of this, but the most entertaining one, there's rats and there's spiders and things like that. But when you pull your camera through, it creates this little pressure wave in the water ahead of it. And somebody had put in a rubber glove and the pressure wave came through, filled the rubber glove up and his hand came up into the camera.
The footage is creepy on its own.
Right?
Good sewer jokes. Well, those are the details on the system. I think on the next slide, I just have some similar notes on the scope of work. But again, similar to the facilities plan, we want to assess the existing infrastructure, identify opportunities to improve fire flows, validate that 2014 capital improvement project plan, and then develop and adopt a capital improvement plan, you know, that has some timeline that we can begin to pull projects off of and plug into our actual capital projects fund plan. We will do some technical work in the project. The engineers are updating the water model from 2014 right now. You know, projecting system growth will be an interesting component of the scope. You know, Alta is relatively well built out. We know there are certain kinds of limits on development, such as available land, but also culinary water. And how, so we haven't really quite addressed the question of how to project system growth, but that is something that we will do in order to sort of target the capital projects and deficiency corrections. But again, really, we do want to narrow in on that 2014 capital improvement plan, because that provided a pretty comprehensive approach to improving fire flows and redundancy around town.
Chris, do you think the limiting factor is town infrastructure? I guess I'm thinking about the sewer, or is it the infrastructure that goes down the canyon?
I do not think that I think we have plenty of sewer capacity in Lower Cotton Canyon.
It's the culinary.
Yeah, it's really the availability of culinary water. is a limiting factor. And of course, if there's, you know, our storage deficiencies would increase if there's more development, but again, there's not. There's limited land available for development and there's limited culinary water service, so. Anyway, we're hoping to try to put a little bit finer point on our awareness of those factors in this process, but they're pretty complicated. Culinary water availability in particular, so. Do I have any more slides on the deck? Ah, yes, next up, so. You know, these projects are not, again, they're sort of peripheral to the planning commission's role as the land use authority, the authors of the general plan, and the long range planning body for the town. In a perfect world, we might have had the time and the resources and the bandwidth to do long range planning first, or at least to turn constructively to our general plan, our long range planning documents. And then we would turn to this capital planning process, sort of in the spirit of implementing that long-term plan. But we know we have these deficiencies with our facilities. We've got long-standing goals to build a new community center. And we know we need to make some improvements to our drinking water system, especially. So we're launching these projects kind of in the breach. I think that the way I hope that it goes is if we can get around to long-term planning, do a general plan update with the planning commission, that we could consider those facilities and water and sewer plans kind of living documents to be updated if anything comes out of a long-range plan update that obligates us to do so. Again, I think given what we know about development potential in Alta, it seems safe to me to say that the town's role, kind of our programming, the services we provide will be pretty similar for a generation or so. And that's about as long a duration as you can get in a long range plan for a municipality. So we'll keep you guys in the loop as these projects develop. Do you have any questions?
What is the
Hey,
status of
Chris,
the center?
Hey, Rob, Maren asked a question and then we'll go to you.
What is
Okay.
the status of the community center right now? Nothing's really happened in several years, right?
Yes, so. Governor, listen carefully and let me know if you agree with how I respond to this. So we did the town got some land from the federal government 11 years ago, including a 1/3 acre parcel in the North Flagstaff parking lot between the photo house and the recycling dumpsters, more or less, or the Tom Moore mine. We did a feasibility study, an architectural feasibility study, on a possible community center project on that site. I can't say we concluded that project like definitively. I guess I would go out on a limb and say that the designs didn't go over particularly well with the community, and we have some concerns about exposure to that property. Like the avalanche hazard on that property is particularly high, possibly higher than on our other building sites, or at other buildings around town. Which, you know, kind of the ethics of building in areas of natural hazard aside would be super expensive. Super duper expensive to sink a building in particular. It's a fairly steep slope, and to get a building all the way into that slope, the waterproofing and the reinforcement would be really substantial. So I think in this facilities master plan project, we'll see what comes out, of it, and where a community center would be. Is it right here? John hired an architect who did a kind of a schematic design on a replacement of this building
25 or so years ago. And
Yeah,
it's
so
still a pretty relevant, I mean, it was a good study. They could make some changes now, It's a lot more doable and or affordable and practical than the parcel that we got from the Forest Service just west of there. And they kind of updated it a little bit and gave us some cost estimates. But now I think the one on the Forest Service property just kind of died. It was pretty grandiose. It didn't have a lot of support. I think the one at the current location where some of you are in right now, that one's pretty good. And that, like I said, that's doable, but there's no emphasis or pushing from any particular sector. While we look at different things like what does the marshal need? What do the dispatchers need? So I guess it'd be good to push it and see, look at what we really want and which direction should be next.
Yeah, I mean, I think internally, we're pretty confident that we can, if the community center is the next project or a project the town's gonna do in the near future, that this would be a great site for it. It's relatively well networked from a kind of layout of facilities and town standpoint. It is a decent spot in terms of avalanche exposure, and we own the land. And we have, a 21-year-old schematic design, and then, a 1-year-old updated that design that illustrates the potential of the site, I think, to provide, a bit more than what we have on the site right now, which would be the goal. Similar building. Well, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but that's one outcome of a future community center project.
It's on the scale of this current building, roughly.
Let's say, yeah,
Yeah.
right. So in the interest of keeping you guys just appraised of what we're up to at the town, what's happening in Alta. There's a lot that happens in Alta that the town doesn't have control over. Sometimes we try to have influence over it, then we have, the whatever amount of success on a case-by-case basis. But this is something that we are doing, that we have control over. It's property that we own and we have a responsibility to maintain, and I think it's pretty exciting. And I hope that we can conclude both projects for a plan for what to spend money on, and a good solid 10 years of progress on bringing our stuff up in the future. So we'll keep you in the loop.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah, sorry, Rob.
Well, this is probably frivolous, but at the same time could be educational. I think about 10 years ago, we toured that mine.
Oh, yeah.
We toured the water mine.
Right.
And it was fascinating. And I mean, what's the water guru guy that
Keith Hansen
is over all that? Yes.
Keith is the guru.
Is he still around?
Well, he's the guru emeritus now. So he retired in last July, and Casey Carpenter was sort of worked for Keith. They're both snowbird ski patrollers as well. Keith's currently in Portillo, which I
thought he was doing politics in Camas.
Well, I think Keith's got a lot of irons and a lot of fires. Camas and maybe Pinedale, and sewer studies in Deer Valley and Mountain View corridor, and Keith's a busy guy. But Keith, Keith was our water system operator for a long time, and also happens to know as much as maybe anybody about the mining history. And yes, the Bay City Tunnel is a really cool resource. For sure. Yeah. And Keith is still more or less available to us to answer questions and give recommendations, which is super nice.
Rob, are you hinting that maybe we should do that again? Because maybe Chris, as we transition.
Definitely.
Meetings, Chris and I talked about maybe a
Yeah,
walk.
yes, I am. And the new people, it's fascinating stuff. It really is cool.
Oh, it's smart.
Field trip.
And did you guys get the money to work on your ductile iron pipe? There's a grant that was applied
Oh,
for a couple years ago. Remember that?
Sewer?
No, in the base,
Oh, yes, John, great emotional expense, administered a Bureau of Reclamation grant, Water
Right.
Smart grant to,
Right.
do kind of a cool array of, you know, small improvements to the track and the lighting and on the fuel source at the Grizzly pump station. What else, John?
Well, and then we did not upgrade the ductile. I mean, it's all that HDPE pipe, which is basically indestructible, from the 1,600 feet back in the mine out to the entry and then up to the reservoir. But there's a shaft that's about 350 feet deep. If you go to the very bottom of that shaft, you're sucking basically pure lead. So that's not a good thing. So we're up, our pumps, the town's pumps are sunk about 200 feet. We had 2 pumps. As part of this grant, we added a 3rd pump. And I can't remember what the horsepower is, but it's much more efficient. It doesn't run continuously. The ductile iron was fine. So we have 3 pumps in there now instead of 2, which is a gigantic improvement. Great backup. The HDPE pipe from where we pump up from the shaft at the back of the mine is pretty new. And like Chris said, we redid the track so it's easy to get back to the back. And the lighting, because it's kind of freaky in there when the lights go out. When you can't see anything. I mean, people talk about this, but when it's pure dark, it's kind of frightening. And then we did a bunch of other things, but the system I think is much better.
all
And
right,
it's
Chris, I guess that
basically-
was my question. The grant came through and the work got done.
Everything except converting the Bay City mine entrance from electric to gas. We were going to do that. We didn't get we got no cooperation from Dominion Energy. They put us off like 2 years in a row. And then finally, it just got to be too long. We did the engineering, we did the studies to get that switched over. And basically, what we would have done, it would have been the heating for the Bay City Tunnel pump room would have been gas instead of electric. And if we have an outage for like 5 or 6 days and it's freezing cold, there's a possibility that the water in there and possibly in the treatment center, which is a fancy word for they're just gigantic vessels full of coated metal that takes the pollutants out of the water as it goes through. If there's a lengthy power outage, there's a possibility that that could freeze. But we also have a giant generator in the fire station that we bought specifically 4 years ago, towing up to the water system and plugging that in if there's a big outage. We have not had, knock on wood, multi-day outages that would cause a freeze in that area. So the only thing we didn't do in that grant was convert the electric to gas for the Bay City Tunnel.
Good. So. All right, well, any other updates?
Well, I did want to update the commission on what happened with the staff, but I had the opportunity to do that earlier.
Oh,
Yep, here we are,
okay.
almost Labor Day.
So,
Mr. Chair, did you want
hey,
to maybe want to mention our next? Sorry.
let's keep talking over here, you know?
Well, we're talking about John Nipset and I were talking about future meetings, and I guess we ought to mention the date of the next meeting.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, is there any new business that anybody wants to bring forward? If not, we'll go down to the date of the next meeting, which should be December the 25th, if people are available and there's items to cover. So, how about availability first? September 25th? Not work for people?
Works for me.
Works for me.
So, John?
Maybe that second part of your question, Jeff, and others is items to cover. We can, Chris, you and I can talk about that between now and then.
Yeah.
Anything on the radar for anybody that,
Well,
I think one item could be, you know, a bit of a kickoff from the contractor for the study of the master plan. Just familiarize people with,
Yeah,
them
yep,
and what their plan is.
yeah, something like that, you could think about, John, I know you're a fan of walkabouts.
Yeah, I think I'd like to suggest either September, October before it gets, while the weather's nice. We traditionally, we've done either a walkabout or a ski about. It seems like we haven't done that for a bit. I think that would be, or it could be a crawl about in the water, in the tunnels. That would be a new, that's an option as well.
But
But
you do have to be able to tolerate bending over for long enough to walk back, 1,600 or 1,600, linear feet and some elevation gain.
Duck walk.
yeah, and not have claustrophobia.
Yeah.
So any of those things in
And-
September or
and-
October. Ski about, obviously.
And wear a hard hat.
You have to wear a hard hat
Yeah,
and muck boots.
As I recall, when we did it with Keith, he had all that kind of stuff.
And
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
boots.
Yeah. And boots and rubber boots, because there's a lot of wet territory.
What?
Chris,
Does anything
I'll
sound
be
attractive, anything to the fellow commissioners, September or October, either above ground, reach out to Mike Mon. Learn about, what's on their radar for the winter and possibly the following, any capital projects for the following year, that just more of an FYI for us. That's always, I've found that to be informative in the past. Anybody have any strong thoughts?
Selfishly, John, I'm gonna be, if the 25th ends up being a meeting, I'll be remote that day, so
Okay.
I wouldn't be able to do this tunnel tour that I would be really disappointed to miss, but
All right. Noted.
Let's see.
Maybe that's an October thing. The good news is the temperature never changes inside, so it's always a constant.
I know.
yeah, and this area is hoping they're moving toward expanding the Albion Day Lodge last summer, and that could potentially be an interesting topic for the planning commission to contemplate. I mean, what's Scaria's rationale for doing it? What are the additional amenities? What does it mean for circulation over there? Is there a transit? Will buses stop there? So on and so forth.
Replacing the Supreme Lift
Yeah,
could be,
yeah,
because
all of the infrastructure events associated with the ski area is worthwhile getting a handle on.
Yes, right.
because there was a lot of riparian issues on the first base, and my understanding that the proposal is going to shift that location again. So it'd be good to understand
Yeah.
what's contemplated.
Yeah, well, just thinking out loud here, everybody, let Chris and I will get together to see if there's an agenda for September. And then maybe we plan on something on October 21st, 5th in person, if everybody can hold that for something that we can do, the crawl about or walk about, what have you, or it could be the crawl about and also meet with Mike about his plans. I know that might be a busy day, but if we start at 3 o'clock, it'll be dark. It'll start getting darker by then, so maybe that's not a bad. We'll come out in the dark or end up in the dark after 2 hours. But Chris, you and I can talk about September with Dave's absence and his desire to be part of anything that we do in person. Maybe we'll go up till October 25th.
Is it 25th or 24th, or 23rd is the October meeting?
Oh, the 23rd? Okay, yeah. Yeah, 23rd, I'm sorry.
Yeah, which I won't be, let's see. So my wife is having cataract eye surgery. Well, actually, that's the old schedule.
Are you around, Jeff, the 23rd?
I think so. Her cataract eye surgery got bumped up a couple of weeks, so. I think that's an old date.
Okay, maybe.
Or I'll just leave her there at the center.
So maybe that's a,
You get an Uber.
Uber,
Yeah.
here's the address, take her home.
yeah, I've done that. I haven't, I've come close to for Uber into appointments. Okay, that's what I was, Chris and I have been kind of pondering as far as the next couple of months, so, but we'll get together and see what's cooking for September, if anything. If not, I think we should plan on a fun, something physical and a little tour on the 23rd.
Great. Well, with that, the most important item on the agenda is motion to adjourn.
Hour and 15 minutes. Nice job.
So moved.
It's been moved to
And
adjourn.
second,
All those in favor, seconded,
Who was
all
the
in
second?
favor? Who seconded that?
Rob.
Rob?
Rob.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
guys.
Thanks for stepping in, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Glad to do it. So.
See everybody soon.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Rob,
everybody.
go jump in the lake for us.
Okay, adios.
Bye.
Bye.